Welcome back to Public Affairs on Peach. CBS Atlanta has been committed to uncovering locksmith scammers for the past 3 years. We even set up our own sting operation, and you will be surprised that some of the locksmiths did not deny their lack of skill.
You're vulnerable and desperate.
I locked my keys in the house. And
you call a locksmith for help, but get more trouble.
We have to drill it, baby.
Undercover cameras in this garage capture a crisis in Georgia, an industry overrun by untrained workers.
I think you might be more the D team locksmith than the A team.
Costing consumers money and possibly their safety.
You never know who you're getting when you call.
Jack Wynn is president of the Georgia chapter of Associated Locksmiths of America. He says most of the locksmith ads in the Yellow Pages or online are bogus, advertising for people who aren't skilled in anything but overcharging. So we put it to the test. I locked myself out of this house. Jack shows simply picking the lock can get me inside in seconds. But none of the 3 technicians I call know how to pick it.
If I pick the lock and it's time consuming, the price can go up and up.
2 technicians told me drilling was the only option. This guy calls himself Joseph.
You can't pick it?
Nah, it's very hard to pick. Man, it's very hard. We have to drill it, baby.
He replaces the doorknob and rekeys the lock. His bill, $330, 4 times what we should have had to pay. A legitimate locksmith would have picked it for $75 to $90.
My name's Jeff. I'm with CBS Atlanta News. You could have picked that lock and it would have been open in 20 seconds.
I can't pick the lock.
Why can't you pick the lock?
Because it's...
We had other locksmiths pick the lock.
So he's more genius.
And listen to his candid disregard for the customer.
Usually I drill, okay? Because it's much more easy, to replace that.
And it also costs the homeowner a whole lot more money.
But it doesn't matter. It don't matter.
Does to the homeowners.
Joseph doesn't see anything wrong with overcharging for his lack of skills.
It just makes all locksmiths look like we're a bunch of bumbling idiots when we're highly trained professionals.
Something Joseph admits he's not.
I didn't force you. I didn't hold you hostage. I didn't put a gun to your head.
But you weren't honest to tell someone that hey, I don't know how to pick a lock, it's going to cost you more.
Yo, look at my face, and I'm honest with you. Look at me in my eyes, and I'm very honest. Okay? And I'm going to take a look in the camera, and I'm very, very honest.
Wow. Joining me now, John Sowers, Administrator of the Governor's Office of Consumer Protection. Thank you for joining us on the program.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
This is a very intriguing topic, and so I want to know, as Administrator of the Governor's Office of Consumer Protection with the state of Georgia, what are you able to do in the realm of what power you have to try to regulate this industry? Because as we've talked about, there are no regulations. They don't have to be licensed.
That's true, but not everybody has to be licensed in a lot of trades and businesses. Our power stems from the Fair Business Practices Act, which was enacted in 1975. That statute prohibits unfair and deceptive trade practices. And certainly the kinds of activity that you've been talking about in your shows on this subject illustrates those practices. Quoting somebody a price and then showing up and charging a multiple of that, that's certainly unfair and deceptive. Telling people you're going to be there in 15 minutes and showing up an hour and 15 minutes later, that's deceptive. Having one location and masquerading as over 100 different companies, as Atlanta Locksmith Solutions did, Atlanta Solutions Locksmith, pardon me, that's unfair and deceptive. So we reach those kinds of practices under the Fair Business Practices Act, and I might add, I'm not expressing an opinion as to whether we ought to have regulation or not, but that statute, the Fair Business Practices Act, is still going to be in effect, and we're still going to proceed against people not only in the locksmith trade, but any other trade or occupation who are engaging in activity which is violative of the prohibitions of that act. So that's my answer to that question.
Well, your department has taken some stiff action against locksmiths that are operating illegally, if you will, or violating, like you said, the Fair Business Practices Act. That's and so you're beginning to set a precedent. What is that precedent that you want other locksmiths and really consumers to know about the action you guys are beginning to take?
Well, I have to correct you a little bit. We're not the first administration that's proceeded against illegitimate locksmiths. Perhaps we're the first in a couple of years. We have, it seems to me, always a case or two in office that deals with these kinds of practices. And what the message we're trying to send is that we're not going to tolerate this kind of activity in the marketplace. There's two things that are wrong with it, broadly speaking. The first one is obvious, and that is consumers are getting taken tremendously disadvantaged. They're being tremendously disadvantaged. Mm-hmm. But the second, which is just as true, is that legitimate businesses in the locksmith area are losing customers, losing income to these illegitimate practitioners. And so when we proceed, we do that with the eye that we're going to try to attack both of those problems, and we tailor our remedies accordingly. One thing we do, which does not always meet the eye as much as issuing a penalty, is that in addition, we make people who we proceed against agree to take specific affirmative actions to prohibit them from repeating this kind of activity. And we monitor them for at least a year, if not longer, to make sure that they are doing so. And if we find that they're not, then we have another round of proceedings and higher, stiffer penalties the next time.
And I've also noticed, too, that you're requiring these companies to pay restitution to consumers that may have been taken advantage of, which is great.
Our first obligation under the Fair Business Practices Act is to attempt to secure restitution for victims who can be identified. Of course, sometimes it's hard to do that, and sometimes it's hard to determine exactly how much somebody's been victimized by. But in the cases that we're talking about here, that has been relatively easy. We do it from their own records.
John Sowers, if people want to get in touch with your agency, let's quickly give them some helpful information here as to how they can file a complaint, notify you about this issue or really any other consumer-related issue. There you go, right there.
There you
Consumer.ga.gov is the website, and the phone number 404-651-8600. Thank you so much, John Sowers, Administrator of the Governor's Office of Consumer Protection. We appreciate your work, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and stay with us. We'll be back to wrap up the show right after this break.